Okay, today we're going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to be making a reaction video to the PAX 2013 demo for Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, there isn't a very clean capture on the internet of that video. We made one. We actually made a capture of the live gameplay in a booth, but Bioware never posted it, and I doubt they're going to post it now to help me make this video. So I'm going to actually make 3 reaction videos to 3 different videos I found on YouTube, and then I'm going to splice them together into one monster video. Additionally, I am going to disable and mute the audio from the videos and then splice it in later. So in the end, this may be the most over-edited reaction video in the history of YouTube. So as we get started, let's take a look. Here we are in the theater at PAX. This actually had a much more elaborate presentation setup than might first appear. I mentioned this in the presentation, but I actually don't believe anyone captured this. I actually was carrying 2 slide advancers, 2 different slide advancers at the same time. One that was running the slideshow that you see up on the screen with the screenshots, but the other one was designed to hold our patter, and it was our patter both for this part, the slideshow, but also through the live code part as well. I had practiced this thing a lot, but I wasn't confident in my ability to be clean in front of 3,000 people, so as a result, I actually was running 2 PowerPoint presentations simultaneously. Additionally, you can see that both Mike and I are dressed pretty similarly. We both decided we needed to buy new shirts and went out on the same day to 2 different stores and bought the identical shirts, which is why we look pretty similar, though Mike has a shinier blazer than I do. But that was not intentional, just a coincidence that occurred because we both went out and bought this nice red shirt. I actually still have that shirt. So with that, let's get started.
I figured what better place to come than PAX, where some of our best fans come and gather to share some stuff. And of course, the first thing you're going to be seeing in Inquisition is an all-new story arc, right? A massive campaign for you to explore with all new followers and of course, significant returning characters as well. But of course, it's got an all-new premise. This is the key. It's a world that is set after the events of Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and one that's been torn apart by war, that's been ripped apart as the nations fall apart, as mages and templars turn on one another, and one where the sky has been ripped asunder by this magical cataclysm that's resulted in this huge tear in the veil, the thing that keeps the demons out, bad news all the way around. And what you soon discover as you play through the game is that too much of the chaos that's affecting this world is happening all at once. Too many people are paralyzed, unwilling to do anything to fix this much larger problem for it to be coincidental. And then that's where you step. Because you are going to be the Inquisitor. And you'll be the first one in well over 1,000 years to really take that mantle upon yourself. And the Inquisition, as an ancient organization, was ultimately formed to fight corruption and chaos, anything that stood between the world and order. And as Inquisitor, you're going to bear that mantle. It's going to fall to you to make sure that you head it, and it'll be you that sets its direction, because the Inquisition is beholden to no one. Not the church, not governments. It's your organization to build from the ground up and then command.
So at this point in development on Dragon Age Inquisition, we actually hadn't done our final story alignment. In that story alignment, we actually changed when you became the Inquisitor, pushing it back later into the story, because what we found was that you used to become Inquisitor right at the end of the introduction in Haven, and it didn't feel earned. It didn't feel like you had worked to become the Inquisitor. So we actually moved that. But at this point in time, yes, you were actually becoming the Inquisitor very, very early in the game.
Okay, let's start talking about some of the things that are coming that are new to Dragon Age Inquisition. Some of this stuff that I'm going to start with, we've already actually announced. First and foremost, mounts.
So mounts are an interesting one. In the early 2010s, mounts were pretty much a table stakes feature for fantasy RPGs. If you didn't have mounts, you were not a serious contender in the space. But interestingly enough, mounts were usually done to a pretty, let's say, adequate level. This is true in Dragon Age Inquisition as well. In the case of Skyrim, I've seen Todd Howard speak of this, where they actually reduced the fidelity of their mounts, put less effort in on purpose because mounts were starting to take over their game. In the case of Dragon Age Inquisition, we actually went in with an intention of not allowing them to take over the game. So they were always considered a C-level feature where they would exist and they would provide essentially fast travel within levels, but they were not places where you would have combat on horseback. We did some early prototypes on mounted combat and the like, but decided, much like Skyrim did, that it was not something that we wanted to take over our game like it has in games like Mount and Blade, which is obviously designed to be a game about mounted combat.
And that's important because Dragon Age Inquisition is the largest game that we've ever made. Very large. Larger than large.
Fortunately, we've moved past this for the most part as an industry, but in this time period, there was a bit of an arms race going on in terms of game sizes. Every game had to talk about how many square feet it was, and this was actually how some people were making their buying decisions. I don't think you should be making a buying decision based upon the sheer scale of a game in terms of size, because it's not a good indication of how much content there is, or even how much playtime you're going to get out of it. Very small games with very dense content can actually provide more gameplay than very large, very empty games.
And yes, you may have heard it already, we're bringing back playable races. You can play as human, elf, or dwarf.
So of course, because Dragon Age 2 had a fixed character, it didn't have playable races, so we had to re-announce this and reintroduce it in Dragon Age Inquisition.
And today, at PAX, I'm proud and pleased to announce that you'll also be able to play as Canary.
So Canary had actually leaked as news, and there were a sizable number of people who were aware that we were planning to do Canary for Dragon Age Inquisition. But as I found time and time again, just because a piece of news is out there doesn't mean that all or even most of your fan base is going to be aware of it. I'm not sure how many times I confirmed the existence of Dragon Age 4 before finally most people were aware of its existence. I don't know if you can hear that out. I said including female. So there was a controversy that caught me a bit by surprise. When the leak occurred that we were doing Canary as a playable race, there was an immediate backlash because the assumption was that we would only have male Canary. This was never the intention, but because the news was coming out through a leak, it was missing necessary context about the fact that we were doing male and female Canary. So we actually had to get ahead of this, or try to regain control of this narrative at PAX, because the narrative out there was that we were going to put out a game with male-only Canary, which was never the case. So one thing I would say is, if you're getting news through leaks, chances are you're going to be missing a piece of context. Sometimes that's going to mean that you're misinterpreting the news that you're hearing.
That is the first time that female Canary actually appeared outside the comic book, so it's very important and very gratifying to be able to bring them to Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, complicated PowerPoints aside, you guys didn't come here to listen to Mike and I talk about the game. So at this point, I'm going to actually bring out two people on stage.
The two demoers were Blair Brown and Bruce Venn. I've probably spent more time in a taxi cab with Bruce Venn than any other human on the face of the earth, because he was the primary demoer when I did the press tour for Dragon Age Origins. And I think he was also one of our press tour demoers for Dragon Age 2. So he and I have a long history of demoing Dragon Ages together.
Those are really powerful computers. Yeah. What are we going to do with those?
What we're going to do today is we're going to show you the game live.
So anytime you have a game running in the background while you're doing some other conversation, there's always a chance that something is going to happen, as we will see now happened with Dragon Age Inquisition.
Now, a couple of things. You'll notice that both Bruce and Claire are using controllers. That's made for ease of demoing. We're actually running it on super-powered PCs, but we'll be talking about PC controls at a later date. There will be custom controls for that.
I'm not sure what state our PC controls actually were in. Our keyboard and mouse controls were actually in at this point. My guess, given what I'm saying right there, is they were not great at this point in time. However, it is way easier to do a stage demo using a controller, so almost always when you see a live code demo, it's going to be done in this way. A super-powered PC with a Xbox or PS4 controller plugged into that PC.
There are two of them, because this is in fact live code, and that means something might go horribly, horribly wrong. One of those PCs might catch on fire. Something's already gone horribly wrong. There you go.
We of course couldn't see the screen, so we weren't aware until this moment that that things had gone horribly wrong.
I see little green dots. Okay, that's what's happening. Now, I'm going to keep talking because I'll fix it hopefully while I keep talking. We're only going to show you the tiniest bit of story today. Ultimately, we want to make sure that when you play Dragon Age Inquisition, that you have the cleanest experience you possibly can. So we're going to show you a lot of stuff, but only the barest hint of story.
Anytime you demo an RPG, you always need to essentially prove the existence of story, but you have to be careful what story you actually give away because you don't want to reveal too much. Often what will happen is you will attempt to do some form of misdirection. We did this with the future state of Crestwood. Probably the best example of this that I've seen done is Mass Effect 2 shows off the introduction of the game where Shepard dies and shows it off as one of the possible endings of the game. I think that was what was an excellent bit of misdirection that was used by Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important to note, I think, for you guys is that this one is not being live streamed on Twitch TV, and while it's great, you can tweet it, you can share it with your friends. Think of yourselves as the world's largest focus test.
So Mike's actually saying that because, interestingly enough, the Dragon Age community is incredibly respectful of our secrets. And we were actually worried that if we didn't tell people to leak from this, that they wouldn't. And the point of being here at PAX wasn't just to show 2,000-3,000 people in a theater. It was also to start to build excitement for the game overall. And we'd seen this work with other games from other studios, but we were actually worried that we wouldn't get wide sharing of this demo because of how respectful the Dragon Age community is. And it's really nice that they're that respectful, but we were trying to prime them to maybe share a bit more. It didn't completely work, actually. They were still really respectful of our secrets.
And after we're done here, of course, the Bioware base. You guys familiar with Bioware base? It's a lot of fun for us. It's a really great setup. We love it because it's a chance for us to meet with you, talk with you, and so on. We'll be back there for the rest of the con, and Mark and I'll be there, other members of the Dragon Age team. So if you have questions you want to ask, or dig in on stuff, or gush, or I don't know, don't punch us in the gut. I almost said that. Don't do that. We'll be there. We'd be happy to have you come back.
How are we doing?
Yeah, we should just pretend we're seeing it now. Enjoy.
Enjoy what you're seeing on screen now. Beautiful. Dark or nice?
The game totally undercuts my joke telling, but that's okay.
Oh, now. You want to put your feet there?
This presentation brought to you by Microsoft. Almost yay! they're blinding for everyone.
Thank you!
You're welcome. Good job, tech guys.
Yeah, the tech setup for a stage demo is actually usually incredibly elaborate. The internal sound system is often a combination of something super high tech and something that was installed in the 1950s, and you have dedicated people that have to, let's say, rub the unguents upon it to make it perform. But actually, I think in this case, the problems we were having were actually more related to the PC and the game itself, as opposed to the tech in the theater.
Blair, if you would kick it.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, the audio also wasn't working. I'm pretty sure that probably this was caused by the hoops that were being jumped through to fix the graphical glitch in the first place. But one more try.
Derek is saying something different.
Something chest hair.
So in case you were wondering if this was a video,
Live code, everybody.
So yeah, I mean, one way to know if you're seeing live code is if there are bugs and glitches. I have reason to believe in recent days that there may have been developers that were faking their crashes in order to appear to be using live code. I'm not going to name any names or make any accusations because I have no proof. I would say that yes, typically if there are problems, it's because you're seeing live code.
You haven't muted anything, Blair.
Yeah, we should probably defrag our hard drive. Okay, someone start the poll whether or not the controller works. Is it lit up? Lights again.
Lights again.
On the house. All right, is that coming down? It feels like it's coming down. I can see you. That's a good sign.
That's what's happening.
All right, let's take this one again from the top. Okay, dokie. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We appreciate this. We totally tested it. I swear to God. Yeah, but if you're wondering why we're not shipping this year.
I hope you're prepared, First Enchanter. The Inquisitor has brought us a long way through the circle.
Rest assured, dears, I'm never truly out of my element.
Outflexed by the ladies again. Crestwood isn't far. Let's be good neighbors and deal with that outlaw problem.
Now, before we start moving, let's take a quick look around. This is Crestwood. This area is bigger than any area that we've ever made, bigger than all of Dragon Age 2 put together. It would actually take you 15 minutes to run across in a straight line, if that was even possible to circle a mountain in the way. And actually, this is far from the biggest area in Dragon Age Inquisition. Mike, why don't you start walking us through?
Sure, so Crestwood is part of Ferelden. Its Nation Origins was set in, you're kind of coming home, but it's one that wasn't too heavily touched by the blight. But more importantly, it's a place we've already been. We're a fair ways into the game here, and at this point, the Inquisition already has a presence in this region. The Inquisitor's troops are here, our men are in place, and in response to that, we've received a counterattack. The enemies are coming, they're trying to take the keep that we hold and that we use to maintain our presence. It's bad news, but the Inquisitor...
So at this point in time, in mid to late 2013, we still didn't have the final design for our power system. At the time, we were thinking it would be more military, that the Inquisition would control forces, and there would be a lot more movement of troops. You can see that quite a bit, the fingerprints of that all over the place in this particular demo, partially because it is the way that the system as it existed was working, but I think honestly partially because Mike and I were sort of trying to force something into existence. The final power system, the one that actually shipped with the game, didn't actually come into being until after we had declared alpha. Now, it's a much, much simpler thing than what you can see hints of in this demo.
This is bad news, but the Inquisitor comes to this kind of thing because as Inquisitor you are an inspiration as much as you are a leader. And being there on the front lines is absolutely important to maintain the morale and to maintain the position that you hold. As we come down to the water, you can see the warboats coming in. We're in the middle of essentially a live event that's occurring, and also a coruscation of green energy. I love the word coruscation. What that is a side effect of that massive hole in the veil we talked about, the tear. These rifts are opening up throughout the world, demons are pouring out, undead are coming back, magic is going crazy, and each and every one of them represents a real threat to the stability and safety of everyone that's nearby. This one, in particular, is troublesome because it's underwater. It's very hard for us to reach, but long term, the Inquisition would try to find a way to reach it and seal it, if at all possible. We'll leave that for the main game. We've got a fight coming up because obviously we're under attack, and one thing I want to make very clear, Inquisition does not automatically level its enemies to match yours. If you not do it, you know what that means. Let's do some fighting.
So while the systems that were tying together the Inquisition and the final story were still evolving, the combat actually here is not that inaccurate to what shipped with the final game. Most of the animations are in place. We actually had a lot of content at this point in time. We had a lot of levels, just there wasn't a lot at a polished level that we could show.
This doesn't sound good.
So in addition to big, beefy sword swings, which feel extra physical and weighty, of course you have direct control over your camera. We want to give you the camera that fits your playstyle. And here, conversation is another version of that.
Your Eminence, the call to defend Crestwood. It wasn't out to us like we thought. It's Red Templars. They attacked the village to draw us out, and then a larger force assaulted the keep. The old tunnels of Crestwood. They'll be inside the walls before we can rally.
Now these are my men. They're here, some of them are hurt, and it's up to me to choose what happens next. You remember we said we didn't want to spoil too much of the story. Well, this event seemed like the perfect place to talk about the burden of leadership without giving too much away. And in this case, you see options to stay with the wounded, regroup, and head to the keep. But something I want to call out, you'll notice an additional choice bar. And that is optional. You can turn it on and off, but what we want to be sure is that whenever you're making a choice that has a direct action, the head game, that the paraphrase is absolutely clear. So if you want to make certain you know exactly what role to take, there it is, right there for you.
So the choice bar we added in response to some people feeling like on occasion in Dragon Age 2 they were making a choice and then the dialogue that came out of their character's mouth didn't match the choice they thought they were taking. I like it. It is a place where you can make sure that you're providing extra clarity, and I think it's something that will probably continue.
Get ready to fall on their feet. I want you defending the keep.
Inquisitor, of course.
Leave the wounded and go to the keep. What about Crestwood?
Crestwood means the Inquisition is strong.
Now with that consequence choices relatively meaningless, we put a big emphasis on consequence. They range from the big to the little. Obviously here, our men are going to go to the keep. That's going to affect our gameplay, but also you heard Darrah is upset.
So unfortunately, as we pulled back on the more military aspects of the Inquisition, some of this other opportunity for there to be these world-affecting choices based upon the movements of your troops started to lessen. Though we did move some of them into the war table. But as I said earlier, a lot of this was us essentially trying to will something into being. There wasn't really a system here at this point.
And relationships with your companions, how they feel about you, how they feel about the decisions you're making, remain a huge focus for the Dragon Age franchise and for Dragon Age Inquisition.
The Red Templars misspelled.
We sent their hope to the key. Come on, prisoner. Let's get over there.
Now, Dragon Age Inquisition actions speak louder than words. We could head down there and try to protect Crestwood Village, even though we sent our men to the key. You make that decision, the world reacts to the decision you make, and then you have to react to the world as it now stands.
So this is a point that BioWare has been trying to make for a while. A lot of times choices seem like they're made only in conversation, but really, ideally, what you want is you want the actions the player takes to be what determines what happens. We said, you know what, leave Crestwood to die, we're going to go to the keep. But it doesn't really matter what we said, it matters what we do. When you are implementing choice in your game, as much as possible, I think you want to react to what the player does, as opposed to just reacting to what the player says.
We're going to maintain consistency, we're going to keep our going to the key. In order to avoid any more truth at this point, we're actually going to leave the road.
Now in Inquisition, a big thing we're trying to focus on as well is making sure that we move to an understanding of how you interact with the world. It should go a little deeper than press A to do X. That's fine for doors, it's fine for simple interactions, but sometimes we want to test whether or not you've come prepared, whether or not you can seize an opportunity, whether that's a dark cave you didn't like to go in, or as we see here, these
Man, Mike and I really wanted this feature to exist.
worlds are pulled up, and the Red Templars that control them are long-term enemies, so we can actually burn them and cut off their retreat and weaken them further. And of course, we put a huge effort into locomotion, making sure that if you're stuck in mud, you sure fit. Now here we're using anti-even fire as a potion you keep equipped on your belt. You only have a limited number, but you can use it to burn the boats rather than press A to burn them. And if you had a fireball with your mage, you could achieve the exact same effect. Coming right.
The problem we had was it was easy enough to come up with a system where you had burnable things, but the level design cost of finding rational ways to use them was ultimately a burden that we weren't willing to pay. It was starting to seem like it would take over the game and transform the game from an RPG into this sort of tactical simulation, which is why a lot of this tactical stuff where you're pushing back against the Red Templars and against the forces of Corypheus didn't really survive into the final game, for two reasons. The first being that it was a feature that wasn't really supporting the storytelling in the game, and the second being that at PAX Prime here, none of this was actually real. This was all handcrafted, and we didn't actually have a system behind any of this.
It's a big part of exploring the world that we're creating. So we make our way through here as well. You'll notice we're in, like I said, in the middle of a live event. You can see the time ticking down. This keep strength is falling. This gives us definitely an imperative. And something I want to make absolutely clear. We could pull a red cliff. We could turn around, head on out, and literally everything would fall. We are really at the tipping point as these characters, but it is a valid gameplay option, but not without consequences, as we'll see later. Here, you will notice a cave. It is not the cave. My favorite part of it is when you're in a dark place, you of course want to use light. You want to be exploring, and something that we have pushed further is to make sure that fire, that's pretty mundane. We're in this epic fantasy world, so we've got veil fire. It's capable of being lit by ritual. You can keep it burning for a very long time without fuel because it's feeding off magic itself. And as a result, this flame has some special properties which can be very useful when you're exploring. We don't really have time to study these right now. Normally we describe them and take them back to the Inquisition, but for their keep in nature, we've got some fighting to do.
So the behemoth, the Red Templar behemoth, is an interesting creature. It was driven from the art side rather than from the design side. It actually has some problems from a design perspective because of its tiny little legs and big upper torso. It's kind of hard for it to maneuver around the battlefield. But sometimes it's useful to give all of your departments the leeway to push features forward, and the behemoth is an example of where we got an extra creature because it was driven through art.
Let's talk about teamwork for a minute, because in Dragon Age games you can always switch to take direct control of any member of your party, and you can do that here as well. Facing a giant monster like this, we're going to use Cassandra. Switch over to her abilities, which are built in order to help deal with it. She can use a rock armor potion to toughen herself up, of course. We can use her warward ability to catch his attention, keep him focused, and with it staying close, she can then use her armor break. It's a special shield badge available to those kinds of warriors that can shatter the armor you'll see around its health bar. Eliminating it leaves it wide open for the rest of the party to take it down. There's some really important things to note in the aftermath of a fight. First thing is, your health does not automatically recover. Once you've received your wounds, they stick around for quite some time until you return back to your home base or rest at a camp. This means that you need to be careful with how you're healing. With potions, you only have a limited number. You won't be able to carry stacks of thousands of lesser healing potions anymore. Sorry. Because we're going in for a more realistic feel. And there's actually an ultimate goal to this. With limited healing, limited health, and no automatic recovery, we're asking you to think about the adventure, not just a single encounter. I don't want you to feel comfortable when you see 3 wolves. I want you instead to consider whether they're worth avoiding, whether they're worth engaging, or whether they're something you want to tackle in order to get their hides, the XP.
So what Mike's saying there, I think, is critically important and something that RPGs constantly are grappling with. If you have free access to healing, either through automatically healing after combat ends, like happens in Dragon Age 2, or healing magic, like in Dragon Age Origins, very easy ways to just stand still and regain health, then every single combat needs to be a challenge all by itself, because if it isn't, it's a speed bump. If it has no chance of killing you on its own, it's basically nothing. Whereas if you have health that depletes, or some other form of depletion that occurs as you're playing, then the series of encounters you have becomes the combat. Now, that may not be the feel that you're looking for, that may not be what you want, but it is important, and it is something you see as a conversation in the RPG space as to how this should work.
So at this point, we're actually going to jump ahead a little bit in time until after we would have finished securing our key.
Demo magic. So are you. Hey, I'm saying I can't see.
Those things don't get a second chance at us.
So if you recall, there was some trebuchets firing the key earlier. Let's head over that way and make sure
Yeah,
it's
time
properly.
thanks to the soldiers you sent back.
Okay, it looks like we're going to have things in hand. So I'm actually going to have let's go up onto that bridge and take a quick look around.
So of course my patter here implies that I'm just telling Blair and Bruce where to go, but of course we have practiced this a million times, and they would go this way if I fell unconscious, as we will discover if I ever find a clean capture of the E3 demo for Dragon Age.
Now, as you can see, we're just scratching the surface of this area here today. This area is vast, and we're only seeing a tiny part of it. Let's head over to Crestwood Village to assess the damage that's occurred.
Dragon Age Inquisition was the first time we had really much more vertical levels in the series. So we had jumping, but we also had these more elaborate interactions with slopes, as we were showing off there. There wasn't an accident that we were walking along a slope there. It was intentional so that we could show off the movement.
On the right here, you can see another cave. Caves actually are something you can enter seamlessly. There will be no load screen, and there will be caves dotting the landscape throughout Dragon Age. In Dragon Age, we want decisions that have consequence in the world and to your game. Decisions in Dragon Age Inquisition are tough, and they have hard-hitting consequences. In many cases, the decisions you make will have lasting implications. Content will be unlocked, you'll get access to things you wouldn't otherwise get.
There's nothing to be gained by going there now.
Come on, Seeker. Don't you want to see our handiwork?
In some cases, doors will be closed forever.
So with this kind of consequence, it's always a balancing act. How much content do you want to lock away from a player because of a choice they've made? What you really ideally want is something that we've called campfires in the dark, where there are moments or bits of light that have choice around them, but there isn't an intricate web of consequence. So if you lose a place like Crestwood, that's the consequence. It's not then rippling throughout the entire game, because if you do that, the amount of content that needs to be created to react to the situation is huge, and the amount of content that's locked away because of this consequence is huge. You want players to feel it, you want it to have emotional impact, but you don't want to make your game turn into a web of choices affecting other choices. Something else that I think is shown off nicely by this moment that is incredibly true of Dragon Age Inquisition, but that we haven't been able to articulate until more recently, is that storytelling is driven through characters. Ultimately, I think one of the reasons that caused us to set aside some of the more military and troop-based aspects of the Inquisition was the fact that we couldn't figure out how to anchor the storytelling on it. And that's because there are no characters there. The characters that join you, the followers, are there with their own stories and their own agendas. The only real character in Dragon Age Inquisition that's truly anchored on the Inquisition itself is Harding. And she was a really late addition She doesn't even exist at this point in time.
Now, this is one of the smaller examples of Dragon Age reacting to your decisions. We've shown you how this is actually locked away content, removed it from the game. What we're going to do is we're going to load the game in a different place and show you how you can actually unlock content.
Now in Inquisition, you'll be traveling all across the world. You'll be going to snowy mountain passes, demon-infested bogs, barren deserts, and more. And with this next load, we're going to go to a place called the Western Approach. It is on the opposite side of the map.
Spoiler, only the Western Approach of those areas we just showed is actually in a shareable state at PAX.
It's far to the west in Orlais, and it's a barren desolation for us to visit.
Now this is by far the biggest game our studio has ever made. Dragon Age Inquisition is made of large, distinct areas, letting you explore a lot more of the world. From western Orlais to eastern Ferelden. This is ultimately a game of nations, so we couldn't confine you to a single city or a single province.
So in this point in time, there was a lot of concern from the PR and marketing groups that Dragon Age Inquisition wasn't a contiguous open world game. So we were constantly questing for different language to talk about this as a big game that wasn't contiguous. So we used multi-region open world. We used lots of different language. I actually like that term, multi-region open world, and I do prefer it as an approach. I think it gives you opportunities that a contiguous open world does not, but it's a bit of a matter of taste.
All the regions you visit have a significance to the Inquisition. There's a reason for you to go there, and a reason that draws you in the first place. But once you get there, each region is huge and expansive, allowing you countless opportunities for exploration and discovery. The Western Approach, where we're headed now, is many times the size of Crestwood, but still doesn't represent the biggest area in the game.
So the point I'm trying to make there is that multi-region open world allows you to avoid filler areas. Now, Hissing Waste is arguably completely a filler area and makes up almost half of our total square footage in Dragon Age Inquisition, but I think the point still stands.
So when we talk about an area that's that big, the obvious question is, well, what do you do there? And that's the thing. The Western Approach, while large, is full of secrets. It's a place that was once held by the Dementor Empire. More recently, the Great Ward was built a line of fortresses and watchtowers along the Abyssal Rift to defend against the Darkspawn during the Second Blight. And in the timeline for Inquisition, the cult, directly opposed to our goals, has moved into this area to try and uncover the secrets long buried in the sands. Most importantly, the Inquisition has no real stronghold here. We don't have a presence in the way we would. So, as this leads us to explore, the thing to note is that there's all kinds of opportunities. Every landmark you see as we look around, those are all places you can go, things you can explore and visit. And we want to get that sense of real exploration. No quests holding your hand. There's a cave system you can see the start of down there. You may not ever be told to go there. And we want to get back to the idea of true discovery. That you and your friend have gone through this area and potentially found stuff that neither of you ever saw in the other game. That's our goal.
So the goal here was to make an open world game. This was BioWare's first open world game, and we didn't necessarily know fully what we were doing. I think in the end we ended up putting a stronger thread through the game because we found that there wasn't enough guidance. I think that was the right decision for us. I think companies like Bethesda have a lot more experience with open world and are able to knit the experience together a little bit more strongly, whereas in the case of Inquisition, it was more about giving more opportunities for exploration. I think it was the right choice, what we ended up doing, and I think the game ends up striking a nice balance between storytelling and exploration.
Now, of course, Inquisition is fundamentally a game party-based, and the party members, of course, continue to banter and chatter amongst themselves as you explore, but they also can offer help. They can spot things, they can call things out, things you might not otherwise see.
there on the cliff face?
Something very, very safe, given the environment.
Now this gives us a long-term goal. How do we reach that cave? Or you know. Two long-term goals. The whole valley there is filled with the noxious gas, almost impossible for us to get in. And of course, we now realize there's a dragon in the area. We wanted to make sure that large threats like dragons or enemy fortresses are always visible, something that you are aware of and grow in understanding. And of course, they become part of your long-term plan as you play. Speaking of, this keep you can see in the distance here is one that we've been working on in this city. We've had a plan to try and weaken it. We've drawn its troops out to kind of attack them outside the walls. We've managed to poison the well. So it's in worse shape than it normally would be. And a keep like this is a very tough fight. Well, tougher outside of the demo, to be honest. But the simple truth is that, by weakening it, we're actually able to, gain some significant ground. But that's a long-term plan. Short-term, there's a number of significant things we can do in order to improve our odds when we're facing a superior force. So let's pull that sword out and take a look, if we could, at Inquisition features our deepest crafting system to date.
Well, that's for sure. Dragon Age Inquisition's crafting system is by far the deepest that we've ever done. Maybe the deepest that will ever be done in a Dragon Age game, because I think what we found was it was a little obtuse for some players. We'll see what Dragon Age 4 ends up landing at.
Be able to forge your own weapons and your own armor and give them the silliest names. Whatever. As well as an incredibly intense alchemy system to carry more potions and so on. But all that is great. If you've got some situational things, the enemies there are not immediately charging us. We don't want battles to get up in your face. We want to give you time to prepare. We want to give you time to execute a strategy and to think tactically. But we know there's a specific way you guys like to do that, and that sometimes it requires a change of perspective.
So, Dragon Age Origins, obviously, on PC, known for its tactical camera. Dragon Age Origins on consoles didn't actually have TacCam. And Dragon Age 2 didn't have TacCam at all. So, TacCam remains this interesting feature in the Dragon Age franchise, where some players feel like it is a key part of the DNA, and other people never use it whatsoever. What we found in Dragon Age Inquisition was it was a feature that was not used very much, and even those people who did use it often used it simply to survey the battlefield before doing most of the combat in the third-person over-the-shoulder camera. Because it's such a radically different camera angle, TacCam requires a significant amount of additional level design and especially level art work to allow it to coexist with that over-the-shoulder camera.
Tactical view isn't just back, it's back for every platform. It is never been and with it, of course, you can, in pause time, you can issue orders, tell your characters to move to different points, set their targets, tell them to use abilities, leave ice traps. All of that can be done as part of your long-term strategy, and then, without changing your perspective, you can choose to engage. Start time, continue moving with the most free-floating camera we've ever had, then take your next steps. Continue with your plan, lay it out, and then at any time, return back to full action play over the shoulder, third person. It's up to you how you want to play. Not really worth its name if its doors are wide open. It's hard hard for, it should be hard for you to attack, and whether or not you need to find the bolt hole, make your way through a series of tunnels to get in here, fight your way around the back because it's not the most solid game, or potentially, as I said, have you brought the right tools for the job? Maybe you expect one of your warriors to be an absolute battering ram, as we have with Cassandra, and you can just knock.
Expect a standard formation of ranged enemies on the walls and expendables girding them.
Mind you, we render them all expendable.
Now, interacting with your environment is a huge part of Inquisition, and should be not just something when you're exploring, but also as part of your battle plans. And as we can see here, we've got a line of soldiers there, the archers, up on that bridge. It would be absolutely difficult to reach. We'd have to climb ladders or make our way around to the walls. But we noticed that bridge was a little bit rickety, giving us a huge opportunity to freeze these guys in place so our warriors have a clear run to that support.
This kind of environmental gameplay where you can destroy things and have the environmental objects react to your abilities is something that a lot of games want to do, a lot of games attempt to do, but few games do completely well, fully immersively. Obviously something like Breath of the Wild is the pinnacle of this kind of action, object, reaction kind of gameplay. But we were attempting to move Dragon Age down this road to some degree.
And of course, enemies are at their best when they're challenging you in different ways, not just being tough for big sacks of hit points. That's where Gladiator here has a huge shield deflecting arrows, deflecting spells, making it very hard to take them down unless you use teamwork to properly flank it. Sometimes you even have to open up new routes to reach it in the course of that. Together a little more intelligently.
I am ready to stop! Like nothing! He will reign!
So we're facing an enchanter who's a very powerful mage who can add benefits to his allies, causing the archers to fire arrows. He can throw lifts down on the ground, making it very treacherous for us to move around. So our first goal is to cut him off, try and isolate him, and make sure the archers don't have clear lines of fire using the wall of ice. Destroying parts of the battlefield, we want to make sure you can create zones of your own advantage and do so on the fly. Now the enchanter has very thick magical enchantments protecting and making it very tough to kill, but using the spell we can tear those down, again leaving him wide open.
One big advantage of pause and play, not specifically TACCAM, but the ability to pause in the middle of combat, is it does make the game a lot easier to demo, because you can set up spectacular moments and then time them with what is happening in the talk track, in the patter.
The keep's ours. We've claimed it. We can now take control of it and claim it for the Inquisition. Good job.
So like the burning of the boats, the keep capture system was something that ended up not really making it into the final game. We had a plan of having, I believe it was 7 different keeps across the map that you would capture and hold and then have to defend. But again, this is a feature that doesn't actually really reflect the storytelling and gameplay of the rest of the game. And as we continued, we realized that it was going to take up a huge percentage of the development budget in order to execute properly. So it ended up being cut. There are still the remnants of those fortresses in a couple of places across the game, but the overall keep feature ultimately never really came into being. I wouldn't even necessarily say cut, because we never really fully implemented it in the first place. Let's step back for a second. We've captured a keep. What are we going to do with it? Keep capturing represents just one of the ways to influence the world in Dragon Age Inquisition. You will make tough, personal decisions that impact the people important to you. You lead the Inquisition, a powerful organization that is the deciding factor in the balance between the mages and the Templars, in the fate of nations.
Mages for the win.
One thing that did survive was judgments. That ended up being one of the primary ways we showed your power as an Inquisitor beyond just your ability to enter into combat. And I think that feature was really effective, and it was actually relatively easy to implement at the end of the day. So thematically, I think we accomplished what we were going for, which was the Inquisition as this extra governmental organization. It's just that in this demo, we're showing a lot more paramilitary aspects as opposed to the more political and judgmental aspects that ended up being in the final game.
You make leadership decisions of a powerful organization. It's the deciding factor, the balance between the mages and the Templars, and the fate of nations. And you decide how you deploy your troops and agents. These decisions will strengthen you and your Inquisition in different ways. Capturing keeps is like getting new equipment for your Inquisition. Once you get it, you can then customize it. You have a keep like this. Do you want to customize it for something that's espionage, secrets, information gathering? Or a little bit more inviting, commerce, connections, place for merchants? Or, as we're going to do today, do you want something that's focused on pure military might? It's your game. This decision will change how it plays. Now, once you control a keep, you can use it as a base of operations to deploy your agents in the world and make a fundamental impact on the region where you have a keep. Ways that are major, visible, and affect your game. You can rebuild an ancient monument, put that shattered colossus back together, increasing the renown of the Inquisition, spreading your influence more broadly.
So this is hinting at what would become the war table gameplay, where you use your Inquisition to execute missions from the table itself.
Or open up the West Gate, giving you access to vintage magical devices, old artifacts. Or, if you remember, there was a cave we wanted to get to, blocked by some poisonous gases. We can cap those vents and harvest the gases for our alchemy. And it's also going to give us access to additional spaces and maybe let us get to that cave. Now, let's get back to the game and take a look at this in action.
So our goal with Inquisition, above and beyond anything else, is to make sure that you feel like you have impact on this world. Not just story changes, not just some letters being sent to you, but physical changes that manifest your growing power, your growing influence across the world. A new key like this not only offers opportunities for the Inquisition to work its way forward, but also for you to rest, to recharge, to replenish your potions, so you get a new party member. All those things are now possible. You essentially have a new home base, but not the only home base.
There you are. Everything is secure. We've already sent out the trolls.
Now we asked ourselves, are there things that we could do to keep that player empowerment, to keep you in charge of your game, even when it comes to conversation, which normally is a mode the game enters, often outside of your control. In an event like this guy comes up, he doesn't have the most critical information, so you can actually toggle between the modes, deciding whether you want to engage with them, ask him a series of questions, maybe learn some new info, or if you prefer, to simply walk away.
So the simple conversation system, which is what we were showing off here, was our attempt in Inquisition to try to allow the player more agency. The problem is that the consequence is that those conversations, the simple conversations, are not staged. And what we found in the end is that those conversations lose a lot of impact without having that adequate staging. What you see in a game like Witcher 3 is every single conversation is staged. The staging might be incredibly simplistic, but it's staged, and that gives more weight to those conversations. So I think the experiment was a good idea to try to give you the ability to leave conversations more easily, to come in and out as you wanted, but the end result was that it undercut the minor storytelling quite a bit in this game, I would argue.
It's the little things. It is. As we make our way through the keep, we'll return to the more barren wilds of the deserts and you'll be able to see the first steps of the Inquisition spreading its influence.
Not after the trouble you gave. Your controls, the region is secure. I can't promise it will be safe exactly. We still have the ultimate dragon.
You can see the first car on chemical caps. It's visible there in the distance. A bit of a plume coming out of it. Of course, some other places you'll want to check out. Something shining on the hill, fortification up top there, possibly connected to the west gate. This area that we haven't opened up yet because we have not done so in our position, was a direct result of our choice. But this area to our right is that chasm that was filled with that noxious gas. Completely impassable before, but now that we've taken the key, we can now open it back up, go explore it. And the nice thing is our men are here, are hard at work, they're harvesting these different alchemical opportunities, and worker safety is at an all-time high.
So it wouldn't be a Dragon Age game if we didn't have a big monster go raw at the end of the demo. So here we are, the dragon.
So we have one more thing we want to talk about today. It's in the name, dragons. Dragons in Inquisition received a complete overhaul. They are big, they are bad, and they are going to push you to your limits. In fact, each dragon is a specially built encounter designed to work and interact with the space in which you find it. They are long-term, aspirational enemies. You will find the most amazing stuff when you take them out, but doing so with something as enormous like a high dragon like this will prove exceedingly difficult. So, they've also learned a few new tricks. Let's head in and check that out. Sorry about that. They all turned into Smurfs.
So I believe that Dragon Age Inquisition's dragons remain the best implementation of dragons in any game. They are the best combat encounters in that game by quite a bit because they take advantage of the environment and they are incredibly well animated, and fighting a dragon in Dragon Age Inquisition is an incredible experience. Nice of Aaron to dress up for our demo.
All right, well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Mike and Mark. Thank you, Blair and Bruce, for an amazing demo. We had a pretty good opening for this because, again, you got to see that it's all live software, no canned video, nothing like that. It's all rendered in the game. It's all running on a PC and everything, so no tricks.
But I mean, I will put this caveat on it. Every demo is some tricks. It was running in game on real PCs, but if it's handcrafted for the experience, as most demos are.
So it's a really good thing. We still got more than a year to go to finish this game off. So the team's going to go back, take all this energy back.
I think what Aaron said there is really important. If you are a game developer and you have an opportunity to go to a convention, especially one of the fan-facing conventions like PAX, seize that opportunity, because the energy at those conventions where you're interacting with fans face-to-face, one-on-one, is completely different than what you get online. It's just a totally different experience, and it is energizing.
There'll be a lot more content. There'll be lots of, they got a pretty cool game when it comes out. So with that, I'll remind everybody where to buy our base. That is at the second floor, level 2 WSCC. We've got lots more panels coming on. We're all going to head back there now and be there tomorrow for questions, for Q&A. Tweet at us, post messages, Facebook, whatever. We'll try to answer your questions. Really glad to have you guys here again. We're not live streaming this. This was just for you folks here at PAX.
We really did want it to leak a little bit.
So with that, I will say thank you on behalf of the studio, the Dragon Age team, and we'll see you around PAX. Thanks again.
Okay, one more thing before we move on to our retrospective. We opened up the PAX presentation with this piece of concept art, Morgan in the Helem Shirel Ballroom. Also at PAX, Jessica Marzan, our community manager, had actually built a cosplay outfit of this Morgan outfit. I'm pretty sure she was about ready to kill Matt Goldman because the boning on that corset is actually physically impossible. What I would say is, if at all possible, at your announce in the early days, if you can have cosplayers primed for that announce, that's a great boon, because it gives you extra excitement, extra attention, even in those early days when there's not a lot else to show. Okay, that is the PAX demo for Dragon Age Inquisition from 2013. So let's move on to the part that I suspect that a lot of you joined for, which was to talk about the inaccuracies in that demo. So do I think that that demo that we showed is a lie? I don't think it's a lie. I think a lie implies an intention of misrepresentation. I do think that it is, however, inaccurate. As I discussed inside the reaction part of the video, we overemphasized the military and keep capture aspects of the game. Now, there was still keep capture in Dragon Age Inquisition. There were 3 keeps that remained, but that feature became more of a role-playing feature as opposed to a tactical feature. You captured the keep, and then it provided additional missions. At the time of the PAX demo, we had yet to figure out the balance point of the game. Do I wish that we had been more accurate at PAX? Absolutely, I do, because yes, the game that was presented is slightly different than the game that was there. I think at the micro level, the individual features, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, we didn't have the burning of the boats really, but the movement, exploration, and those aspects is accurate. But I think that the part that's really off is that it's misrepresenting the macro level of the game. It's implying that there is going to be a lot more military and maneuvering at this sort of nation-state level. Do I wish that we had made that game? I absolutely do not wish we'd made that game. Dragon Age Inquisition is the game it was supposed to be, and it is the game we were trying to make. It's just that at PAX in 2013, we hadn't yet figured out that these more military and tactical aspects were actually detracting from the role-playing and character interaction aspects of the storytelling and the RPG parts of the game. So I guess what I would say is I'm very glad that we did this demo. It helped crystallize Dragon Age Inquisition into the game that it became. It helped build excitement with the fans. And ultimately, Dragon Age Inquisition wouldn't have been the game that it was without us having done this PAX demo. So while I might wish that at that moment we had known exactly where the balance points would have been, I do remain very glad that we decided to go to PAX in 2013 to present to an auditorium filled with people who got very excited, to force ourselves to make the game showable, even if what we showed ended up being a little inaccurate. Okay, so that's it for this video. It's a little bit different than what we've done before. If you liked this style of reaction video, let me know down in the comments, and maybe suggest something else you'd like to see me react to. If you did not like this video, let me know that down in the top comments as well. If you liked this video and you made it this far, please give the video a like, share it with someone else that may have thoughts about Dragon Age Inquisition and PAX. I will see you again soon. Thank you.